Well, 150 years ago, this was Buffalo's commercial center, the grain trade. 150 years later, it's the heart of the 2018 NHL Central Scouting Combine. I'm Jack Michaels along with Bob Stauffer and the Oilers assistant general manager Keith Gretzky. And Keith, no grain trade this week, but rather a confirmation of what you already suspect about this year's top prospects?
Exactly. What we do is we have about 17 kids a day that we interview, and there's a few kids we take at nighttime for dinner, and you want to get to know them. Our scouts have done some interviews, and so it's just to reassure what we know.
Keith, how would you assess the overall depth of this draft? I know the Oilers are drafting 10th, but beyond that, would this be considered a deeper draft, an average draft?
Well, everybody always says you wish it was always better, and there's always players you have to dig deep. The guys have done a lot of work during the year, so there's players that we like, and hopefully we can get them.
At 10, is that a different strategy for you if you're top 5 or 6 or deep in the 20s? Does it make a difference where Edmonton's selecting in terms of your preparation?
No, we prep that we're going to get any player that we have on our list, and we start from 1 to 120 that we have on the list. So it doesn't really matter. Guys battled all year for their players that they want to draft that we go and watch, see, and so we're comfortable with what we have on our list.
Keith, the general consensus specific to the 10 is that there's a clear number 1, and there's 3 forwards that'll go somewhere likely in the top 4, the top 5, and then there's going to be a run of defense. So on that note, with defense, would there be any concern in drafting undersized defensemen? Because by my count, there's under 10 defensemen in the league 5'11" and shorter. So it tends to be a position where you still need to be able to defend, and you need a little bit of size, and there's a couple smaller D-men that are pretty exciting prospects.
Well, I think 4 or 5 years ago, you would worry a little bit about guys being on the smaller side, but nowadays the game has changed. So, we'll take the best player that's available, and it doesn't really matter. We showed it last year, taking Yamo, being a smaller winger. So there are players out there, there are defensemen that are on the undersized, but for us, we believe in a player, we're going to draft him.
Keith, in the run-up to events like the Combine and the Draft, as Bob mentioned, there is general consensus, and there's talk, and guys are sliding and moving up and down, and all of a sudden, it seems like everyone's thinking the same thing. You've known these guys for 20, 25 years, your contemporaries. At some point, do you take a step back and make sure you're seeing it from your perspective and not being affected by anything else?
Well, that's the biggest thing. When you have this job, you have to, have the mindset it's your list, it's nobody else's list, and it's you use some of the lists for check marks to see if you're in the same, ballpark. But when we put our list together, it's all the scouts have worked all year. They've gone to 200 games in a year, and they want a player. We're going to put them on the list, and it's because we want them, not anybody else.
Keith, how difficult is it to sort of evaluate players when you have a kid like Noah Dobson that just finished up and had a tremendous run in the Memorial Cup, and then a guy like Evan Bouchard with London who's been done for 6 weeks, or conversely a player like Jesperi Kotkaniemi who had a stellar U18 championship? The more recent you see him, you might have seen him good, whereas other guys you saw good, but that was several weeks ago.
Well, that's, it is last seen as the last viewing that you have, but you have to put it all in perspective. And, with like Evan Bouchard, he was out early in the year, and, we know what he can do. And other guys the same way that, are still playing and just finished up with the Memorial Cup. So, Dobson is a prime example, like you mentioned, and, he had a good Memorial Cup. So is it going to help their stock? Of course it would. It'd be silly to say it wouldn't help the kid, but, he's a good player, and that's why you do the list and you have it all ready.
Finally, until there's an on-ice component at this Combine, can a guy in your mind really help or hurt himself this weekend?
Well, I look at it as if, like when you come here, you want to give 110%. And, we've seen it where other players have come in and really struggled. And, it does raise a little flag. and you got to do a little background work. That's why you're here, and it's part of the process. And the guys that do very well, you're happy about them because you probably like that player. So you got to put all the pieces of the puzzle together and build your list from there.
We'll be harassing you all weekend. Thanks for your time.
Anytime.
All right, that's Keith Gretzky, the assistant general manager of the Edmonton Oilers. Bob and I have you covered this weekend. Keep it locked on Oilers TV for the NHL Scouting Combine, presented by Sport Chek.